Welcome back to Scrapbooking Kindergarten. I am so excited to talk about scrapbooking paper today because it feels like we're finally getting into the things that are fun to talk about and think about when it comes to scrapbooking. Starting off, I want to share where I get my scrapbooking paper. Primarily, I get it from craft thrift stores. I know that I'm super blessed and lucky to live in a state that is very craft thrift store-y and just very much into thrifting and repurposing and all of that. So I know that most states or countries do not have craft thrift stores around, and typically regular thrift stores don't have great scrapbooking supplies because if you think Goodwill, for example, my mind just goes to clothes or shoes or bags, things like that, furniture, not scrapbooking supplies. So it is very difficult to find good things at a regular thrift store, unfortunately. But if you are blessed, like I am, to have a craft thrift store, just Google it, try and find one because they are like heaven on earth. Like they are amazing. And that is pretty much where I get as much as I can for my scrapbooking stuff just because it's so cheap and it's normally really unique things. But if you do not have that, I also know that Hobby Lobby is only in America or North America. And unfortunately, that is the only other place that I get my scrapbooking paper from. I love the Paper Studio just because all of their paper is acid and lignin free. And then they have different weights too. And they have this basic pack that I love and just so many different options for paper. And Hobby Lobby also has just a really great supply for scrapbooking, whether it's just the basic background paper I use, like the craft backing, the page protectors, the glue, everything I use is pretty much from Hobby Lobby or thrifting. I would probably look at Facebook too because there's so many people it feels like selling on Facebook Marketplace, and that's a really good option. Normally, because they're scrapbookers selling their stuff, they know what it's worth. So it's not going to be as cheap as a thrift store or even Hobby Lobby on sale, but it's a really great option if you are just trying to find scrapbooking stuff. And it kind of gives you that repurposing and helping someone else out, not just throw away their things. The next question I think is a really great question. It's what basic patterns to use that are cute. I would really recommend doing a paper book like this, for example, because typically they do have a lot of patterned papers, but they will have some basic pattern paper as well because they know that you are going to want something to balance out the really patterned and busy pages. So something like this is a really great option for starting out. If you just find a paper pack that you really like the theme or the vibe, the colors, and that's a really great starting point. And then from that, for example, like this is a really patterned paper, but then they go into some simple patterns like these polka dots, and that's just so versatile. And it's a great balance for everything else. Those stripes, these gingham checkered looking thing. And typically every paper pack will have some balanced out basic pages. And if you want to just be super simple and just like get started as soon as possible, a paper pack is the way to go because of that. But also it makes it really easy to choose your solid papers too, because whenever it's a paper pack, they're going to just consistently use the same colors. So whenever you have a page like this, for example, this is showcasing pretty much all of the colors they have in this paper pack, and you could just use this in the store that you're shopping at and pick greens that match these greens, pinks that match, oranges that match, and then all of a sudden you have a really great stash of pages and colors and solids that will match. So that's just a really great way to go about it. I also really like this pack from the Paper Studio at Hobby Lobby because it is all basic patterns. I feel like it's really important to kind of have a variety of that because whenever you are combining patterns and colors, there's just such a variety of how you can balance that out. So for example, for this, it's white with kind of bigger black polka dots. And then on the next pages, it's black with small white polka dots. And even just that slight difference between the pages would just change your pages so much. For example, I think if you were to want this to be your main paper for your scrapbook page, and you're trying to choose between these polka dots for what looks best, I would never choose that white and black polka dot because it just feels like it is a total clash and like just a lot going on. But for some reason, the small white polka dots and mainly black look great with that pattern. So I hope that makes sense. Like, you really do want a variety of how the colors are shown and the size of them, so that way you can always find matching things that look well together. And the trick is really just trying to find things that balance each other out. That's why I love having solid papers too, because when it comes to patterns, it's just really easy for it to get really overwhelming and confusing and just a lot going on with the patterns, that it's nice to have just basic solid colors that still make your page cute, but don't add to the clutter and visual chaos of the page. So I really, really love using solid papers and just really collecting and building that stash, because you can always combine that with pattern paper. And also, pattern paper is more expensive than solid paper. So it will also be a little more budget friendly to really tap into learning how to use solid papers well. And I also would recommend less contrast. So for this basic pattern book, one thing I don't like about it is that pretty much all of them are a color and white. Yes, it's cute, but that really gives a lot of contrast sometimes. So, like, this is blue and white, this is dark blue and white, this is purple and white, pink and white, and it's all whites. Whereas my favorite page in this book is this one, because it's a simple pattern and it's just two shades of the same color. And that visually will already kind of give a relaxation and calmness to the page. And that's kind of similar to these green polka dots as well. Now, they're small polka dots, so it's kind of a lot visually. So I would never use this as like a main background page, but because it's green with light green polka dots, it's a lot easier on the eyes than if the polka dots were white. When it comes to choosing your pages and making a great selection for how you're going to decorate your spread, I highly recommend just choosing one main patterned paper. As you can see in this video, I'm choosing two main patterns because I'm batch prepping, meal prepping for my next full month of my baby's photos. So I wanted to have two main pattern papers so that way it could last for the full month. But basically, you want to choose one main patterned paper, and then from there, build your basic patterns. I would really recommend having at least one, if not two, solid colors to go with your main patterned paper. And then you can throw in a good contrasting subtle patterned paper if you would like to, just to add a little more fun to your page or more patterns to your page. But having a more simplistic patterned page that is high in contrast to your main paper, like I chose these orange polka dots because it contrasts with my main pattern paper really well. So I can use it as a background for photos or a background for my text boxes, and it will contrast while still giving a subtle pattern where it's not just plain paper, but it's also not competing with the background paper as much. And that is just a really simple way to choose your papers, because I feel like if you start trying to match a ton of patterned paper, they just really start making the page feel like there's too much going on and it's just stealing from the actual pictures that you're scrapbooking. When it comes to storing your paper, I use one of these little file organizers and it's been really great, but I would definitely say get an expanding version of this, because I just have to use like binder clips to keep my papers organized right now, which is fine, but it makes it a little more difficult to actually choose papers because I have to take them all out and pretty much out of the binder clips to look through them. Whereas if it was a expanding file, then I could just see them and flip through them and I wouldn't have to have them clipped all together. And that would be my number one recommendation if you are trying to save space and you don't have a dedicated craft room. So if you do have a dedicated craft room, or you just like having all of your stuff displayed, then I would say a standing organizer like this is so nice because you can keep your pages like all organized and by color or event or holiday, and it's just beautiful. Another option kind of along that realm is these little organizers. They are really nice too if you have a ton of scrapbooking paper because they're really wide and you can have them displayed all by colors and, events, things like that too. So those are kind of the same ish in different styles. And then if you want something kind of in between the file organizer and these shelves that will kind of help protect your pages, because these two options, your papers are out. So your kids, if you have kids, can still grab those papers and string them around the house or eat them. And if you do not want that to happen, then if you don't want the file organizer, then I would say this is a really great option because it has like the drawers and they have a regular letter size or a 12 by 12 size. And I would say get the 12 by 12 because most scrapbooking paper is 12 by 12. But this is really great because you can store other things in this organizer and not just paper. So if you don't have a gigantic stash of paper, then it can be really multifunctional. So I have a letter size version of this. I wish I had a 12 by 12, but I have a letter size version of this. And I put my stamps and hole punchers and all of my extra little goodies in here. Since I have a lot of scrapbooking paper that is 12 by 12 size, I actually just moved all of my paper out of that into here so that way I could have them all in one place. But if I had a 12 by 12 version, my paper would definitely be in there. Now for weight and acid free. Do either of those matter? Yes, they do. The weight of your paper doesn't matter as much unless you aren't using backing paper. So if you aren't using backing paper, then you will want to have thicker scrapbooking cardstock because you don't want your page just flopping around and like struggling to hold all of your pictures on it. But if you're using a backing paper, like normally I feel like you will with scrapbooking, then you really don't have to worry about it. And you might actually want to lean towards thinner paper because then it's a lot cheaper. If you're using backing paper, then just go for it. Just buy paper. Don't worry about it. But if you need strong cardstock backing paper, then you need that. And does acid free matter? Yes, actually, very much so. But there is kind of a workaround. Basically, the only reason acid and lignin free matters is because it will deteriorate your photos if they are not on a paper or if you used glue tape that's not acid and lignin free, because it will cause your pictures to deteriorate, yellow, brittle over time. And by over time, it can be as soon as 10 years or 20, which actually is not very long when you think about it. And I feel like if you're putting so much time and effort into your scrapbook, it's because you want it to last and you want these memories to be something you look back on for the rest of your life and maybe even pass down to your kids or to family. So you definitely want to take the time to use acid and lignin free tape for your photos and backing paper for your photos. Aside from that, it really doesn't matter. If you want to use regular paper for your decorations, fine. Just make sure anything that is touching your photos is acid and lignin free. That's it. And you can use regular glue, kids' school glue for everything, but have acid free glue, tape, runner, glue for your photos. And that's a really easy way to kind of save money too if you want to do that. But if you want to just kind of streamline your process, then just do acid free for everything. It's really easy nowadays for scrapbooking paper to be acid and lignin free. I haven't really come across any scrapbook paper that isn't. So you don't have to worry about it too much other than your adhesives. But it is very important, I feel like. And aside from that, I feel like the only other thing when it comes to talking about paper is the scrapbooking paper that is double-sided versus single-sided. And I feel like this is definitely personal preference, but I actually really, really dislike scrapbooking paper that is double-sided. And that is because if it's double-sided, I'm having to choose one of these patterns and the other one is just getting wasted. That does not make sense to me at all. And maybe there's a reason for it. If there is, let me know. But I would say if you can find just single-sided scrapbook paper, that's really what you want. less decisions, and that way you can actually use the patterns that you buy. So thank you for watching. If you have any more questions, please let me know and come back next week for our video. Next week is going to be on layouts and how to lay out your scrapbook pages. So that's going to be super fun and exciting. And if you have any questions about that, drop those below and I will add them to the video.